Police say now many parks in East Oakland have been taken over by drug dealers.
The crack epidemic was so incredible that it was hitting our waves, but then it was making dudes rich.
Investigators say they arrested a suspected drug dealer yesterday. They claim he was trying to recruit a 10-year-old boy to sell rock cocaine. In Oakland, Sherry Hu, Channel 5 Eyewitness News.
In the twilight of Oakland's concrete jungles during the late 1980s and early 90s, Emmanuel Lacy rose from a Fremont High wrestling star to become one of the city's most formidable cocaine kingpins. Born and bred in East Oakland, Lacy was known early as a Fremont High standout on the mats. He briefly wrestled at San Francisco State before the lure of fast money and power pulled him into the drug world. By his late 20s, Lacy orchestrated a sprawling cocaine distribution network, a family-run syndicate that operated in tactical alliance with Anthony "Ant" Flowers' crew, together reigning over much of East Bay's crack cocaine trade. The early 1980s in Oakland were electric with hustle. Crack had touched down like a plague, and Lacy, always watching, saw the blueprint. He used his Fremont High ties and East Oakland roots to connect with mid-level suppliers. But Lacy wasn't built to be a runner. He was studying the operation like a playbook. By the mid-1980s, Lacy cut his ties and built his own outfit, quietly and efficiently. He started with 5 trusted soldiers, but when he linked with Anthony "Ant" Flowers, the real change came. Together, they formed a brutal alliance. His crew ignited a bloody war against the Bluitt gang.
Lower level money guys at a dice game at a park one day, and it was some upper level money guys in the same dice game. And in all dice games, you know, at some point in time, somebody's gonna fight or argue, and the fight broke out. And my version is that the cat who didn't have the most money kind of quick, bang, 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 and kind of wanted to fight a little bit. And then that shit escalated to some talking and some shit spilled over to some other shit. And eventually, somebody got knocked the down. Somebody got killed. When somebody got killed, it jumped off a war. But I also feel like that just wasn't behind a dice game and a fucking little friction that happened at a dice game. It was, to me, it was more about the younger motherfuckers, or the one set of motherfuckers was like, we run these streets. We really on the pavement. We really in these motherfucking streets. We sell dope. We do all this. We kill motherfuckers. We in the streets, on the pavement. The other motherfuckers is like, well, we own these streets. We kind of like, you know, sell the most dope and got the most money, and we do it like a real different kind of way where we kind of move like mafioso kings and shit, you know, and it just clashed. So you got the motherfuckers who feet on the pavement, roaming around looking for these other motherfuckers. You got these other motherfuckers who got all this money, who could probably just hire somebody or just, you know, it was a crazy little war.
Centered on territorial control of the Acorn housing projects. The beef boiled from 2 corners: the Acorn housing projects, where Lacy and Anthony "Ant" Flowers had quietly built their base of operations, and the Bluitt gang, a tight-knit crew out of the Cypress Village projects, just blocks away. On the surface, it was a local turf dispute. Underneath, it was a war between 2 criminal empires, both with heavy artillery, paid shooters, and federal eyes already watching. The breaking point came during the July 1988 shooting of a Bluitt lieutenant and his girlfriend at a corner store near 14th and Peralta. Witnesses said Lacy himself was present, standing beside 2 masked men who opened fire. The girlfriend, just 21, a student at Laney College, was shot in the back while trying to run. She bled out on the pavement in front of a crowd of kids. The violence didn't go unnoticed, and the feds began building a RICO case as early as 1989. The crime nearly earned Lacy the death penalty, only being spared due to a witness set to testify went missing. Convicted of manslaughter, he served 8 years before parole in '93, only to pick up the reins again, quickly reclaiming dominance. But in 1994, a monumental crackdown netting 46 arrests, 21 guns, kilos of cocaine, and $200,000 in cash was executed by hundreds of federal and local agents.
An unassuming auto detailing shop on West MacArthur is where drug agents say they tap phones. It's believed to be both a legitimate business and headquarters for alleged gang leader Emmanuel Lacy.
Lacy stayed underground until September 1995, when DEA agents captured him, ironically, scalping tickets outside a Denver baseball game. Courtroom filings put Lacy as the mastermind. One wiretap affidavit details his coded conversations about narcotics, money, possible shootings, and future meetings. He ruled through fear, intimidation, and murder, remarked a DEA spokesman during the 1994 raids, capturing both dread and grudging respect.
These two organizations ruled the streets of Oakland through fear, intimidation, and murder. The organization had been responsible or has a connection to 31 documented homicides, 5 of which were committed during the last 5 months of this investigation.
By December 1996, Lacy's empire lay in shards. Courts found his organization culpable in bringing down Oakland's homicide surge. But although the large-scale structures he built fell, the skeleton remains. Smaller crews, new players, but the same hunger.
Hopefully we're going to get the message out sooner or later. If they didn't learn it from Felix Mitchell and Darryl Reed or Timothy Bluitt or the Lacys or the Flowers, they'll learn it sooner or later, but we're here to stay. We're like country music. We're going to be around forever.
Rudolph Rudy Henderson wasn't born a gangster, but he lifted iron and demanded respect in equal measure. Small and jacked, he spent his youth at Oakland gyms, sculpting his physique. By the mid-80s, Oakland's cocaine trade was flourishing in the vacuum left by fallen mob bosses. According to Oakland Police Department records, Rudolph Rudy Henderson briefly emerged as the city's largest cocaine dealer, until he too was arrested. In 1989, smart and methodical, one car salesman recalls, he'd come in, put $5,000 cash down on a Mitsubishi Starion and say, "I'll take the deposit back later in a check." He'd disappear, then come back and cancel the sale. Of course, the returned money would be in the form of a check. It was cool with him because depositing a $5,000 check in his bank account aroused fewer questions than $5,000 in cash. He was using me, but what could I do? He was an Oakland drug dealer, and nice or not, this is not the type of person you can tell to screw off. Rudy wasn't buying dimes off corners. He was moving weight, buying keys from bigger suppliers who were tied to Mexican connections. He built a wholesale model, supplying other dealers who ran blocks from 7th Street to Seminary and beyond. If you were flipping in Oakland in the late 80s, chances are your bricks had Rudy's fingerprints. By 1987, Rudy's quiet efficiency became a target of obsession for Oakland narcotics detectives. He wasn't slipping, but his network was swelling. And when networks grow, someone always talks. An intercepted phone call between one of Rudy's couriers and a known LA plug triggered a wiretap operation. OPD worked with the DEA to tap lines from one of Rudy's lieutenants who handled calls. The DEA, OPD, and the IRS raided 3 stash houses. In total, they recovered 12 kilos of uncut cocaine, $550,000 in cash, ledger books with initials, weights, and dates, 3 firearms, and a custom safe buried in a wall. After being arrested of federal cocaine conspiracy, Henderson's downfall was swift. First came the prison sentence, 25 years behind bars. Then came the dismantling of his material legacy. His treasured antique car collection was sold off, and finally, his hilltop mansion was put up for auction. When Rudy Henderson was snatched up by the feds in '87, Oakland seemed to slow. But by the early 90s, the wheels started spinning again. Rudy's organization, once structured like a corporation, was now split. A West Oakland OG once said, "Man, when Rudy got locked, the wolves ate the carcass. Blocks that used to make $30,000 a day turned to a war zone." In 2002, Rudy was released from federal prison, keeping a low profile while running a used car business. He stayed low-key until 2006 when he was shot on a Saturday afternoon while sitting in his vehicle, outside of a North Oakland restaurant. He was rushed to Alta Bates Hospital in Berkeley, where he was pronounced dead. Henderson was 57 years old. The killing happened just 8 months after Henderson's 25-year-old son, Rudolph Henderson Jr., was murdered in a carjacking in East Oakland.
He was a legend. He was an Oakland legend.
Yep.
He was the Oakland legend. Yeah, we know Lil D. What?
Lil D was one of the most smartest guys that I ever met, and he was real low-key, he was real dangerous, and at the same time, he think for himself.
And this is a real legend, bro. He the last kingpin, bro, of Oakland, bro. Last kingpin, bro. Real talk, bro. Real life American gangster, bro. Right here in the flesh, you feel me?
Born and raised in East Oakland during the turbulent 1980s, Darryl Lil D Reed learned awareness early. School was a mandate, but the streets called louder. He began peddling marijuana as a teen, but the crack epidemic opened the door to bigger money and bigger danger. By age 12, Reed had already learned the corner hustle. East Oakland's blocks were incubators for a darker economy. The OGs, post-Black Panthers turned corner lords, watched him. He became a runner for Felix Mitchell's 69 mob, where he watched and learned the hierarchy and the art of silence.
Like, man, 12 years old, 12, 13 years old, man, and being in them Rolls Royces, man, and watching this fly guy with all these beautiful women, he was like Robin Hood to us, and he had a influence on me because seeing that young, you get caught up in the visual,
The older hustlers saw his discipline, and by 13, he wasn't just running errands, he was moving product. Oakland's streets were changing as the crack era hit hard and teenage boys became CEOs of the chaos. Lil D saw his opportunity. At just 15 years old, he branched off, built a crew based on loyalty, and created a system where runners were treated with dignity and paid on time. He moved weight so efficiently that older cats twice his age came to him for product. Lil D started buying cars in cash, flipping houses in his auntie's name. While other teens were dreaming of football scholarships, he was moving bricks across the bay with military precision. By 17, he was so dominant, his name rang out on both sides of East 14th Street. And by 18, he had become a millionaire. By 1989, Lil D wasn't just rich, he was infamous. But power has gravity, and Lil D's rise had drawn the eye of someone deadlier than a rival set: the federal government. He was making more money than people with MBAs, said one former DEA agent. That made him dangerous, not because of violence, but because he had influence. The feds labeled Reed's organization as one of the largest youth-led narcotics operations on the West Coast. The indictment alleged he had distributed over 1,000 kilograms of cocaine, moved through an interstate pipeline stretching from Oakland to Los Angeles, San Jose, Sacramento, and even parts of Texas. The final nail was a recorded conversation between Lil D and another alleged trafficker, discussing price points and distribution timelines. Then came the pre-dawn raids where Lil D was arrested. At trial, the prosecution painted Reed as a criminal mastermind, describing his organization as highly structured as a Fortune 500 company. His defense argued Reed was a product of his environment, a teenager thrust into an adult world. But the narrative had already hardened. The media called him the King of Crack. He was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison, with no chance of parole. Lil D did his time quietly, never testifying, never flipping. Over 25 years, he transformed himself, reading law, teaching, mentoring. And his story became a cautionary tale back home in Oakland. Then in 2016, President Barack Obama issued clemency, freeing him after 28 years behind bars.
Nicole Lee with Oakland's Urban Peace Movement lobbied Washington to free Reed. She says Reed's been a mentor to hundreds of youth by calling into meetings over the years.
I think he feels like it's his responsibility to turn the tide the other way, and really use his life experience as a way to help steer young people in Oakland in a more positive direction.